pressure from the backside. He goes down again. The ball bounces out. Duke trying to fall on it.
Get a field goal attempt and 3 points.
3 sacks in the game for Duke. Garcia at the 18. Jalen Stinson with the interception. Thought it was smoke and mirrors. It's going to be a pass. And at the 37, Darius Joyner. Garcia got hit. Ball's on the turf. It looks like Duke was first on the scene, and the indication is it is Duke football. The
Emergency's got to begin. Down 3 scores. 8 minutes left to play.
Garcia to sail that one, and it's an easy interception. 2 in a row. Dismissal with the head coach. This one is picked off as well. Garcia, that one popped in the air. Still loose. Picked up by Duke. Could this be the 8th turnover of the game? Carter has it.
Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right. It's me, Uncle Lou, live on LouTube for you on a Sunday during the college football season, and you already know what that means. It's time for the only weekly college football recap show that actually matters, where we highlight the amazing list of losers. There's a million places you can go to see highlights. Oh my God, this team played great. This player did this. That's not what we do here. We highlight the bed shitters around here. And look at this. Every one of these people right here dribbled down their leg yesterday. And we're going to talk about it right now. Week 8. My God, things are going by quick, ain't they? Yeah, they are. Undefeated teams dwindling down. Had a couple more go down this weekend. Had a couple more remain undefeated this weekend. It's going to be a great end stretch of the regular season. We got 6 weeks, I guess, of the regular season, about, give or take, left. A couple of weeks, 1 week in October. And then we got November. And then it's on to conference championship games, bowl selections, and playoff bids. My favorite time of the year. Playoff bids. Anyway, where do we want to start today? Let's see. Man, you should see this list of losers in my copious notes. Let's start with Texas. Texas, what are you doing? Man. Texas, the Shorthorns. When are y'all playing Kansas? I know you're tired of having this helmet upside down. I know you are. Man, I got to climb up here again. I know you're tired of having this helmet up here upside down, but you already know the situation, Shorthorn man. It doesn't matter what your record is. If you want me to flip you right side right and take that Kansas helmet up off the Shorthorn helmet, you got to beat Kansas this year. But you didn't play Kansas yesterday. You played Oklahoma State, and, well, you took a giant L. Kansas, not Kansas. You can't beat Kansas. Texas. In a way, now, hear me out now. Don't just tell me I'm wrong right away. Let me explain. Texas, in a way, is this year's Nebraska from last year. Who remembers Nebraska from last year? 3-9, horrible team, right? That's not what I'm saying. Texas isn't a horrible team. They're obviously not great. They're somewhere in between there. But that's not what I'm getting at here. We had to hear pretty much the entire season last year, the offseason this year, when it came to Nebraska. Yeah, they were 3-9, but all their losses were by one score. That's still not what I'm talking about. That's still not what I'm talking about, though. I already know you lost 41-34. I already know that. It's a one-score game, but that's not what I'm talking about. What have we heard about Texas? I'm guilty of it for the first 6-7 weeks of the season leading up to this week. You know, if Quinn Ewers wouldn't have got hurt, we'd have been 5-0, 6-0, 7-0. Well, you're not any of those things. You've now got 3 losses, one of which is with Quinn Ewers. Mind blown. You lost yesterday with Quinn Ewers. And look, I'm really not going to dog Texas that bad. Oklahoma State's a good team. Texas is a good team, right? This was, this was a 50-50 type of game. If these teams played 10 times, what do? Split them 5-5. But Quinn Ewers did not have a good game. And this is sort of, there's a lot of risks with playing a freshman quarterback, right? But even if you have a freshman quarterback that plays well for a few games, you always have that sort of creeping suspicion in the back of your mind. Okay, when are the dumb mistakes coming? When are the freshman mistakes coming, right? And unfortunately for Texas fans, that day came yesterday. Not a good day yesterday for Quinn Ewers. Probably his worst outing of the season. 3 interceptions, I believe, he threw. And look, when you have a one-score game at the end and there are 3 turnovers, that's a pretty good indication that those turnovers cost you the game. Now, you can go back and rewatch the game and pick out other things that aren't turnover related and say, well, yeah, but if this, and this, I get it. But those things could have still happened, and if you'd avoided the 3 turnovers, you probably win the game. There's no shame in losing to Oklahoma State outside of the fact that Texas just doesn't want to lose to Oklahoma State. They're a good team, like I said. Quinn Ewers, rookie mistakes caught up with him yesterday. 3 INTs against the Oak State defense, which I think has been better this year than people thought they would be. But again, like a freshman quarterback, kind of, Oklahoma State's defense has been up and down. I said numerous times in the first month of the season, Oklahoma State's defense is going to catch up with them. And it has already. They play pretty good, and then they have some lapses. They lost the defensive coordinator from last year. Everybody knows that deal. Here's the problem for Texas. Forget the Alabama loss. That's a non-Big 12 loss, right? But now you've got two Big 12 losses. And look at who you lost to. You lost to Texas Tech, okay, but Oklahoma State, they're a front runner as far as going to the Big 12 title game, and so technically you're now 2 games behind them because they own a tiebreaker over you, and you've got some tough games left. That in other words, even if Texas runs the table with 2 losses in the Big 12 and one of them being to Oklahoma State, that's a huge hurdle for Texas getting to the Big 12 title game. Even bigger problem is you're probably not running the table the rest of the season. Again, I feel weird getting on. I not really want to dog Texas. I mean, I was very high on Texas heading into the season. And the quarterback situation was what it was with the injury. They're not going to be as good as I thought they were going to be. They're not going to be as bad as some people thought they were going to be. They're going to be somewhere in the middle. Bottom line is, if you're a glass half full type of Shorthorn man, it's going to be a better season than last year, right? So stepping stones types of deals. You're probably, I'm going to go ahead and say you're not winning the Big 12 and you're not making a New Year's Six Bowl. Playoff aspirations and all that have been gone with the 2 losses. Up until yesterday, you still had a good chance of making the Big 12 title game. And then if you win that, probably a New Year's Six game. I just feel like those are out the window now with this 3rd loss. You still got 4 or 5 games left against some tough, against some tough opponents. Plus Kansas, which you already know, automatic L for the Shorthorn man. But yeah, Texas, your season is over. No playoffs, no Big 12 title, no New Year's Six game. You'll play in whatever, Cheez-It Bowl or whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll see you next off season, I guess. Who wants to go next? Man, so many to choose from. Can we get this one out of the way? Because it's not really fun to laugh at these people. Kansas State. Kansas State lost 38-28 to TCU. The only reason I'm really putting Kansas State on here, well, first of all, I feel like up until yesterday, Kansas might have been the best team that no one was talking about. I know they lost to Tulane early in the year, and then everybody was like, oh, you lost to Tulane. Well, do yourself a favor and Google what Tulane's record is right now. But I just feel like nobody really talked about them. Now, they talked about them when they trounced Oklahoma, because at that point, we didn't know what kind of a dumpster fire Oklahoma was going to turn out to be. So they did get a lot of publicity that week, and that was the week Adrian Martinez had a great game and all that. They haven't lost a game since that Tulane game back in, was that week 2? It was a long time ago, week 2 or 3, whatever it was. And they've been on a roll. No one was talking about them. And then they got some talk again this week, but not because they're Kansas State, because they were playing TCU, which, of course, is the only undefeated team now in the Big 12. So some people did talk about them this week. And for the second week in a row, a team gives up a massive lead to TCU and throws the game away. Now, in Kansas State's defense, not only did they lose their starting quarterback, Adrian Martinez, they also lost their backup quarterback in this game. So they end up having to play their third-string quarterback the majority of this game, and he wasn't very good. And that's not really surprising. It's hard to get a second-string quarterback reps during the season, at least enough reps to keep him prepared to play. Never mind the third-string quarterback. I mean, in a lot of situations, your third-string quarterback is running scout team the majority of the year. So, but disappointing for Kansas State. They were up 28-10. They were up 28-10. The third-string quarterback comes in, and they never scored again. And TCU just clawed back and had another huge second-half comeback, just like they did last week against Oklahoma State. I feel like I'm saying the same things about TCU this week I said about them last week. Oklahoma State had that game won. Let's get some water. Let's take a water break. While we're taking a water break, make sure you're hitting the thumbs up. It takes me a long time to make these videos. At least you can do is hit the thumbs up. So go ahead and do that now. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in, too, by the way. What were we talking about? Kansas State. Second week in a row, TCU has a huge second-half comeback and wins the game. Now, there's a couple of different ways to look to look at that, and we'll talk about TCU in a second, talking about the losers right now. But so you lose Adrian Martinez, you lose your second-string quarterback, third string comes in, you're up 28-10, basically able to do nothing the rest of the game, and slowly, TCU gets back in the game, and they end up beating you. They end up beating you yesterday, 38-28. So 28 unanswered points for TCU. Kansas State up 28-10. Final score, TCU 38. Kansas State 28. The Big 12 is so fun to watch this year because without there being a dominant team, and again, we'll talk about TCU later on in this video, but without like an Oklahoma-level dominant team, right? Just a team that you can just close your eyes and go, yep, they're top 5. Without that, what you're left with this year especially is 4 or 5 good to really good teams. I mean, like I said, maybe there's not a super elite national title contending team in the Big 12. Again, we will talk about TCU in a second. But there are 4 or 5 really, really good teams. They could all beat each other. And while that's fun to watch as a college football fan during the season, it is not good in terms of trying to get a team into the college football playoffs. Doesn't it feel like the Big 12 is going to get left out? It feels like that to me. It feels like that to me, and it's got nothing to do with how good or not good I think TCU is, or Kansas State, or Texas, or Oklahoma State, or fill in the blank team in the Big 12. TCU 2 weeks in a row has dodged disaster with huge second-half comebacks. And I just wonder how long they can survive like that in a conference where half the teams can beat you on any given day. We'll see. With that being said, obviously if TCU goes undefeated, they're going to get in. I don't see them getting left out. Because if they go undefeated, they're going to have some wins over, again, whatever we think about the teams doesn't matter. When these playoff rankings start coming out in a couple of weeks, there's going to be several Big 12 teams ranked in there. And if TCU's undefeated, they're going to have wins over those teams, and that's the type of thing that impresses the playoff committee. The question is, can TCU go undefeated? Now, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Now, they're off to a great start. Hell, we're over halfway through the season. They're still undefeated. They're going to be ranked probably in the top 5 or 6. They're right there knocking on the door. This is just how I feel from watching a lot of Big 12 football this year. I just feel like there's about 4, maybe even 5 teams in the Big 12 that could potentially beat TCU on any given Saturday. And in order for TCU to get to the playoffs, they're going to have to beat all of those teams. And we'll see. Again, I don't have anything against TCU. I like their uniforms. They're fun to watch. I think Max Duggan is one of the most exciting quarterbacks in football. It just feels that way to me when I watch the Big 12, like it's going to be one of those type of deals where at the end of the year, too many people have beat up too many other people, and somebody's going to get, a good team is going to get left out. A 12-1 TCU, for example. It's going to come down to them and some other team probably for that 4th spot. I could see that happening, and maybe they don't get the nod. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm not writing the Big 12 off as far as making the playoffs, but right now, that's just how it feels to me as far as the Big 12 goes. So, sorry, Kansas State. Your season is over, even though Deuce Vaughn is amazing. He so reminds me of Barry Sanders. And I hate making comparisons like that because, there's going to be a bunch of people that go, he's nowhere near as good as Barry Sanders. Yeah, Barry Sanders is a once-in-a-lifetime type of talent. I agree with you. I just mean when you look at his size, right, his stature, the way he runs, the moves he makes, it gets overused, the expression, that guy's got video game moves. Deuce Vaughn has video game moves. He had a spin move yesterday that would just, you had to rewind it and watch it 2 or 3 times. Just unbelievable. So much fun to watch, Deuce Vaughn. And I'll continue to watch Kansas State this year, but for the purposes of this video, I hate to inform you, but your season is over. Speaking of season being over, we had 2 undefeated teams crap to bed yesterday. 2 undefeated teams crap to bed yesterday. One in the Pac-12, which I can't wait to talk about. But one in the SEC. Ole Miss. Man, this was not a surprise to me. And it was not a surprise to Vegas either. Ole Miss lost yesterday to LSU on the road in Baton Rouge. And the game wasn't close. And this game got a lot of talk this week leading up to the game. Not so much about the game. Well, the game got talked about, but the betting line on this game. When the line came out last Sunday, Ole Miss was favored anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 points, depending on where you looked. By the time this game kicked off yesterday, LSU was favored by 2 to 3 points everywhere you looked. It had completely, not only had the line, gone down from Ole Miss, it completely flipped to the other side, and LSU was widely considered the favorite, and they played like the favorite. Beat Ole Miss 45-20, a million unanswered points to close the game out for LSU. This was my issue and concern with Ole Miss. They're a great running team. If you don't have the ability to throw the ball downfield consistently and to scare teams, basically, then it's hard when you fall behind, or it's hard when you play a team that's able to score on you. Ole Miss's defense has not been good. That's the problem. There. Ole Miss, their last 2 games, they played Auburn and Vandy. Arguably the 2 worst teams in the SEC. Okay? Auburn scored 34 points. Their offense is atrocious, Auburn. If you haven't watched any Auburn football this year, first of all, you're not missing anything. But second of all, I'm just here to let you know, they've got maybe the worst offense in the SEC. Vandy may be a worse team. I'd love to see Vandy and Auburn play. Vandy might be a worse team overall. I don't know. But Auburn's offense is worse than Vandy's. It's absolutely horrific to watch. And they put up 34 points on Ole Miss. Before that, Ole Miss played Vandy. Horrific team. No offense. Vandy scored 28 on Ole Miss. And I have been talking for 2 weeks when it comes to Ole Miss. Look, let's give them their due. Let's give them their credit and their respect. They're undefeated 6, 7, 8 weeks into the season. They're 7-0. But look at their defense the last 2 weeks and look at their schedule. They played LSU. They still got to play Bama. Of course, Mississippi State, Arkansas. Just look at their schedule. They were 7-0. They could finish 7-5. That's not likely, but it's possible. When you look at their schedule, that Ole Miss could start 7-0 and finish 7-5. Now I think it's going to be more like 8-4, 9-3. I think they'll win 1 or 2 games down the stretch, but they're going to lose more than they win in the last 5 weeks of the season, and that started yesterday with this loss to LSU. And let's give LSU some credit here. They were completely written off after week 1 because they lost to Florida State. They put a couple of wins together, and then it kind of had people scratching their head a little bit. Well, maybe it just took Brian Kelly a couple of weeks to get his feet wet or whatever. Maybe they're actually going to be pretty good. Then the Tennessee game happened. And I know Tennessee's a really good team, and they're going to beat a lot of people by a lot of points this year. But nobody really saw that coming in Baton Rouge. It just demolished them. And not taking anything away from Tennessee, but sometimes when you watch a game, it's more about the team that lost than it is the team that won. Tennessee played great in that game. But LSU, just special teams miscues again. And so then you're going, well, okay, I was wrong. Yeah, LSU won a couple of games leading up to this Tennessee game. But look, here they are again. They're just doing nothing at all. I mean, that Tennessee-LSU game score was 10-0 1 minute into the game. I mean, just turnovers, special teams, mistakes. They gave up a big return. I'm just like, okay, just forget about LSU till next year. And then they go on the road and play Florida and beat them. And so it's an up and down type of deal with LSU. I just had a feeling this week was going to be an up week for LSU. And after watching Ole Miss the last 2 weeks and seeing how poorly their defense had performed against 2 of the worst offenses in the league, Auburn and Vandy, and apparently a lot of people felt the same way I did, that this was LSU was going to beat them. Because like I said, the line flipped completely during the week from Ole Miss being favored to LSU being favored by anywhere between 2 and 3 points. And it just beat the bejesus out of me. This wasn't a game. I mean, the second half of this game was just unwatchable. What the final score ended up being 45-20. I mean, they just drug them up and down the field. I guess Lane Kiffin won't be trolling on Twitter this week after he toted this giant L. He was trolling on Twitter last week. Had some comments to say, I believe, about the Tennessee and Bama game and different things like that. But more on Bama. We're gonna talk a little Bama today. We'll talk a little Bama today. But the other undefeated team that went down yesterday, UCLA. UCLA, it's not your fault you lost. It's not. You ran into an absolute juggernaut. You ran into just an absolute buzzsaw juggernaut. A team that's just been clicking on all cylinders all season long. Oregon's been a great team all season long. It makes people mad to hear that. But look, Oregon was a great team in week 1. They just ran into an even greater team. Week 2, they went out and scored 70 points, beat the bejesus out of somebody. And from that point until 3:30 yesterday, which is when the Oregon-UCLA game kicked off, I've been told the same thing about Oregon in my comments section and on call-in shows week after week after week after week. 6-7 weeks in a row. Oregon ain't no good. They're not any good. Lou, why do you keep talking about beating Oregon 49-3? Doesn't mean anything. They're not any good. I would point out every single time, well, hey, they hadn't lost another game since. They're in the top 15, which at the time they were 14 or 15. They moved up to 12 or 13. This past week they moved up to number 10. Still, I was told the same thing. They haven't played anybody. They're not a legitimate top 10 team. They're overrated. As soon as they play anybody, they're going to lose. I would point out, well, they played BYU in week 3 and blew them out. Well, then BYU lost another game to somebody, and I told you, BYU ain't no good. So Oregon beating them ain't no good. So Georgia beating Oregon ain't no good. It's just like a never-ending chain of transitive property dominoes. These people, some of these people, if you stuck them in a circular room and told them to piss in a corner, they'd be there for weeks. The mental gymnastics that they have to do, the knots that they tie their mind up in to try to justify their idiocy is amazing. But I was told all these things. Oregon is no good. Oregon's no good. Oregon's no good. Therefore, Georgia's no good because they haven't beat anybody that's any good. You know these who have you played people. Just the dumbest people in all of college football. I don't understand really why the who have you played people are even college football fans. I guess I do because you need casual fans. And to be honest with you, probably the majority of college football fans are casual fans. I don't know how many people watch a game on a given Saturday at 3:30, but I don't know. Let's say there's 5 million people watching some random game at 3:30 on a Saturday. 3 million of those people are casual fans. Those are the who you played people. But it showed up week after week to remind me that Oregon was no good, even though they hadn't lost a game except to Georgia, and that they were blowing people out. And that they, I tell them, hey, okay, well, we got the best rush offense in the Pac-12. Bo Nix is having the best season of his career. Defense playing good. Nope, ain't played nobody, Lou. You just wait. You just wait till they play UCLA. Chip Kelly is good coach. Got UCLA humming along. They've already beat Utah. You just wait. Well, I waited. And they played yesterday at 3:30. And what happened? Let me check my copious notes here. Oh, Oregon won 45-30. And if you watch the game, it wasn't even that close. Oregon absolutely dominated this game from start to finish on both sides of the ball. On both sides of the ball. And right on cue, the who have they played people that have been telling me for now 3 weeks that UCLA is going to beat Oregon. This is Oregon's first true test. Like they didn't play Georgia in week 1. This is Oregon's first true test, Lou. Well, where are you now? They're in my comment section yesterday. And you already know what they're telling me. UCLA is no good. UCLA was overrated. UCLA was no good. UCLA shouldn't have been ranked 9th in the country. They're not any good. You're so predictable. You're so predictable. UCLA, your season is over. Because guess what? You're probably going to have to play Oregon again in the Pac-12 title game. That's right. That's right. Now, UCLA does play Southern Cal at the end of the year. And right now, the winner of that game is probably going to the Pac-12 title game to play Oregon. If that game was being played right now, I'd pick UCLA. It's not being played right now. It's played later. Utah, I think, is out. Oregon does not play Southern Cal in the regular season, but Oregon does have a game coming up with Utah, which in theory Oregon could lose, and we'll see. And I'm sure the who have you played people that tell me Georgia's not any good because Oregon's not any good, and Oregon's not any good because UCLA's not any good, those people, I'm sure, now are Utah fans. And that's going to be the game where finally they can prove their point to me that Oregon is no good. I guess Oregon's going to lose to Utah, finish 10-2, and then you people are going to show up and tell me, see, Oregon's no good. Yeah, they're 10-2 or whatever. But they're going to go 11-1 because they're going to beat Utah. And I think get a rematch with UCLA in the Pac-12 title game. But let's be real, even if it's Southern Cal, can't match Oregon. Oregon's just a legitimately good team. And it's like I said in the video yesterday, I don't care how mad that makes you. The facts don't care about your feelings. The fact is that in the preseason, Oregon was ranked 11, 12, or 13, depending on which poll or ranking you looked at. For the majority of the season, they've been ranked in the 10, 11, 12, 13 category. And effective today, when the rankings come out, and they might be out by the time you're watching this, they're not out when I'm recording it, Oregon's going to be 7 or 8. And then what are you going to say? At some point, you guys are going to get to the point where nobody's good except teams in the top 2 or 3 that Georgia hasn't played. That's going to be it. That's going to be all you're going to have. Because I see this every year. And it's not just with Georgia. I go other places and I see y'all telling other people the same thing. I see everybody telling Ohio State fans, y'all aren't any good because you haven't played anybody and your best win is Toledo. I see people telling Tennessee, Tennessee's not any good. Yeah, they beat Alabama, but Bryce Young wasn't 100%. They committed 17 penalties. They did this, they did that. That was Tennessee's one shot and they connected, but doesn't mean anything. They got Alabama on an off day. I see people talk about Michigan. Michigan's not any good. Yeah, they beat Penn State by 100 points, but Penn State was overrated. Penn State was overrated. They're going to lose to Minnesota next week too. Well, Penn State blew out Minnesota yesterday. But don't tell those people that. They'll just have another excuse to tell you why Michigan's not any good. Now keep in mind, nobody is any good according to these people, right? But if Georgia plays them and loses, see? You played a good team and you lost. But they spent all season telling you that those teams aren't good. The who have you played people are literally brain dead. Shout out to UCLA, your season's over. Another undefeated team lost? The fruit. Ooh, Clemson. Clemson. You dodged one, didn't you? Yeah, you did. You dodged one, Tater man. You successfully defeated the fruit. Turns out vegetables, taters, are better than fruits. At least they were yesterday when Clemson beat Syracuse 27-21. I've got a couple of thoughts on the game, a couple of thoughts about Syracuse, and then, yes, I will talk about Clemson. Poor little old Clemson. Oh, a roster full of slapdicks. Is that what Dabo Swinney said? Milkbone underoos. Anyway, okay, the game, it was a great game. A great game. Syracuse got out to a lead. DJ Uiagalelei was playing terrible. Dabo makes the switch, puts in Cade Klubnik. The Taters come back and win the game. Couple of maybe obvious, maybe not so obvious observations. Momentum in college football is huge, especially in big games, especially in close games. For the majority of the first half, Syracuse had the momentum, and they capitalized on it. Clemson was turning the ball over. Syracuse was scoring off of those turnovers. It's a tidal wave effect, right? Second half. Clemson comes out in the third quarter. DJ drives him down the field, turns it over again, his third turnover. Syracuse scores. They go up. Dabo makes the switch at quarterback. More on that in a second. Cade Klubnik's first drive of the game. Nothing on first down, nothing on second down, penalties, lost yardage. Next thing you know, it's 3rd and 25. 3rd and 25, Syracuse got all the momentum in the world. Runaway train, tidal wave effect. All the momentum on Syracuse side. 3rd and 25, Cade Klubnik drops back to pass. Syracuse gets him under pressure, nowhere to go with the ball. He takes off running towards the sideline, gains 4 yards. 4. Before stepping out of bounds, making it 4th and 21. Syracuse player chasing Klubnik hits him late. And yes, it was a late hit. It was not a bad penalty. It was not a bad call. The referees didn't screw that one up. It was a penalty, and you got to call it. And they called it. And that gave Clemson an automatic first down. And like any great team, guess what Clemson did? They capitalized on that Syracuse mistake and then went down and scored a touchdown. And all that momentum that Syracuse had built 2.5 quarters getting was gone in the blink of an eye. Syracuse then gets the ball after the kickoff. They find themselves in a similar situation in terms of a 3rd and long. Their quarterback, Schrader, also runs out of bounds. Clemson hits him late, pushes him late. No flag. It was a penalty. That doesn't mean the refs were in Clemson's pocket. That doesn't mean Clemson paid the refs. That doesn't mean anything other than what it always means when the referee makes a bad call, and that is the referee made a bad call. And here's the deal. Was it a borderline call? Maybe. But if you had called that penalty on Syracuse 15 minutes earlier, which you did, you have to then turn around and call it on Clemson, which you didn't. In baseball, hitters don't care if an umpire has a high strike zone or a low strike zone or an outside strike zone or an inside strike zone. As long as the umpire is consistent on that through the course of the game. And that was the problem yesterday with the refereeing in the Syracuse-Clemson game. I'm not saying that means Syracuse should have won the game. I'm only bringing it up because I've heard Clemson fans say, yes, it was a penalty on Klubnik. It should have been called, and it was. And then turn around and say, no, it wasn't a penalty on Schrader. I'm glad they didn't call it. It was the right thing not to call it. Well, you're wrong. It should have been called on Schrader. I've heard Syracuse fans say the exact opposite. It was a worse penalty on Schrader. That definitely should have been called. He pushed him 3 yards out of bounds. The one on Klubnik was, a bang-bang play. No. The one on Klubnik should have been called. Fruit, man. And the one on your QB, but it wasn't. Anyway, the point is momentum. Clemson got all that momentum. They go on to win the game. And it's fun to laugh at Clemson for a variety of reasons. And yes, this was a close game. And do I think the ACC is the greatest conference in the world? No. In fact, an argument can be made that the ACC this year might be the worst conference. But Clemson in 4 or 5 games in a row has beaten Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, and Syracuse. 3 of those 4 teams are ranked and still ranked. I don't think Florida State is ranked. Wake Forest only has one loss, and it's to Clemson in overtime. So, again, when you watch Clemson play, do they look dominant? Do they look like a national championship team? Do they look as good as the Clemson teams from 2016 and 2018 that won the national title? No. But they also look really good and find ways to win these tough games. And it doesn't matter how mad it makes you or me or anyone else. If Clemson goes 12-0 and wins the ACC title at 13-0, they're getting into playoffs. Now, I agree with some of you. I think Clemson's going to have a hard time this year matching up with any of the top 3 or 4 teams, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, whatever. But so Clemson makes the playoffs and they lose by 30 in the first round. What? Then you're going to come on and say, I told you, Clemson no good. Everybody loses by 30 in the first round of the playoffs. Have you been watching college football since the playoffs started in 2014? Every single playoff game except for like 2 or 3 has been a blowout. That's what happens. The top 2 or 3 teams are just way better than everybody else, generally speaking, especially at the end of the year when you've got a month to prepare for the first round of the playoffs. You've got a month. Of course, you're going to see. So if that happens to Clemson, it wouldn't mean that the playoff committee got it wrong or that you were right all year in saying Clemson was terrible. Clemson's not terrible, okay? Texas had a close game yesterday. They found a way to lose it. Kansas State had a close game yesterday. They found a way to lose it. I could go on down the list. Clemson's had a couple of close games over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They found a way to win every single one of them. And again, I love laughing at the ACC as much as you do, but the reality is Wake Forest, NC State, Florida State, Syracuse. They beat them all in consecutive weeks. They've still got Notre Dame and Miami, which aren't good teams. But look, that's not Clemson's fault. That's not Clemson's fault. Now, on to Dabo Swinney. I am not a Dabo Swinney fan or apologist. In fact, I've spent a lot of time criticizing Dabo Swinney for what I think is good reason. I'm sick and tired of Dabo Swinney's crybaby routine. Poor little old Clemson. We don't get no respect. Every time they lose a game and the AP poll drops them down, he cries about it like remember the quote he hit? These AP voters are just waiting on Clemson to lose so they can drop them. Now, they drop everybody that loses, dummy. But in this case, I've got to stand up for Dabo Swinney here for a couple of reasons. As a Georgia fan, I look at Dabo Swinney and the decisions that he has made regarding quarterbacks, and I drool. It makes me jealous. I'm envious. We all know the Kelly Bryant, Trevor Lawrence situation. Kelly Bryant took Clemson to the playoffs and lost in the first round. Clemson signs Trevor Lawrence. Dabo lets Kelly Bryant start the next season, the first 4 games. Lets Trevor Lawrence play. Decides Trevor Lawrence is a better quarterback. And makes the switch. Sits Kelly Bryant down, says, look, this is what it is, and we're going with Trevor Lawrence. That's Dabo's job. That's what a head coach does. That's why he cashes the biggest check at Clemson. To make those hard decisions. Playing last year doesn't mean no matter what you're playing this year. Dabo gets it. Dabo was rewarded for that tough decision with a national title in 2018. Yesterday, DJ was playing horrible. Let's just call it what it is. It was by far the worst game of this season, and it was worse even than most of his games last season, and he was bad last season. DJ has played really well this year. The Georgia Tech game I thought was, I still had doubts after that, but he's played well since then. Check his numbers, check whatever you want. The guy has played good. The guy has played good football for the last 4, 5, 6 weeks. I just told you they beat 3 ranked teams in a row: Florida State, NC State, Wake Forest. Well, 2 of them are ranked. Florida State's not ranked. He beat them. Dabo yanked his ass. Dabo yanked him. It's not your day, buddy. Yeah, get out. You know the balls that takes? And believe me when I tell you that there are other high-level coaches in college football who don't have the balls to do that. They don't. They don't. Do I need to name them? This is the part of the video where the Georgia fans get mad. I have seen a Georgia quarterback of a undefeated top 5 team go out in a game at home. Clemson played at home yesterday. I've seen the quarterback of an undefeated Georgia team ranked in the top 5 go out for a game at home against one of the worst teams that year in the SEC, a team that ended up with, I think, 3 wins on the season. I saw this quarterback go out and commit turnover after turnover after turnover after turnover. 4 of them. 4. I watched our defense in that same game allow 1 touchdown to the opposing team's offense. 1. And I watched my coach continue to send the same pile of poop out onto the field, possession after possession after possession after possession, no matter how many incomplete passes he threw, no matter how many sacks he took, no matter how many bad reads he made, no matter how many balls he underthrew, no matter how many balls he overthrew, and no matter how many turnovers he committed, which was 4. And Georgia lost that fucking game. Dabo, whatever we think about Dabo, and like I said, there are things about Dabo that irritate me and piss me off, and some of the dumb shit he says, believe me, I've spent a lot of time laughing at Dabo. If you can't say anything else good about Dabo Swinney, he has earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to his quarterback personnel decision-making, whether we're talking about in-game or just overall from a depth chart perspective and point of view. You just can't argue with it. You just can't argue with it. And like I said, maybe you're a South Carolina fan, so you have to hate Clemson and Dabo. I get it. You have got to respect that about Dabo Swinney, because there aren't too many coaches that are willing to do that. There aren't. And there are some really, really good coaches who don't have the sack to make tough decisions like Dabo Swinney makes. Now, who's going to be the quarterback for Clemson going forward? Cade Klubnik or DJ Uiagalelei? Dabo says DJ Uiagalelei. I might feel differently about that. I might agree with him. Doesn't matter. And to the Clemson fans, it shouldn't matter. Dabo has shown you that he's going to make the right decision. He's shown you that multiple times in different years with different sets of quarterbacks and under different circumstances. If he comes out and tells me and the Clemson fans DJ is starting next week, that decision should be supported by Clemson fans. Dabo has earned that. Dabo has earned that. And I tend to believe him. I do think DJ is going to get another shot. It was one bad game for DJ. Now, had Dabo not had the balls to make the move in the middle of the game, Clemson would have lost that game. Make no mistake about it. Make no mistake. The only reason Clemson is undefeated today is because Dabo Swinney has the balls to bench a 5-star quarterback, a starting quarterback, for a talented younger guy. That's the only reason. DJ wasn't going to miraculously snap out of that funk midway through the third quarter yesterday. He would have committed more turnovers. That's the only reason Clemson won that game. So if he comes out this week and tells everybody that DJ is starting next week, then clap and tell him thank you. Clap and tell him thank you. He is, if nothing else, he's earned that. Syracuse, season over. Have a great day. $90 million. Well, between 80 and 90 million. That's the buyout for Gumbo Jimbo. Texas A&M is a absolute fucking disgrace. And there's a lot of teams that fall into that category. None of them have fewer excuses for it than Texas A&M. There is no reason. You could sit down for a month. You can't come up with one legitimate reason why Texas A&M has a losing record at this point in the season. The talent, the facilities, the schedule, whatever it all screams elite. All of it. And all they do is come out and lose a minimum of 4 games every single year, usually going 8-4. Not this year. They've already lost 4 games. They have a losing record. They're 3-4. Their offense, I talked about Vandy and Auburn. You can add Texas A&M to that. Texas A&M hasn't scored more than 24 points. 24. Think about the point totals you see in today's college football. Texas A&M hasn't scored over 24 points against an FBS team in like their last 15 games against FBS teams. They can't score over 24. Not a single time. That's absolutely unacceptable. And it's 100% on Jimbo Fisher. There's nothing else to blame. Would have got quarterback issues, Woo. Who signed those quarterbacks? Who's coaching those quarterbacks? Whose offense is those quarterbacks running? Jimbo, Dumbo. It's all Jimbo. It's all Jimbo. And these Texas A&M fans who keep telling me that there's $90 million buried in the West Texas desert, you better go dig it up. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. I don't think any team under any circumstances is paying an $80 million plus buy. I don't believe that. I'll have to be proven wrong. The amounts of money that are involved in college football now have desensitized us as fans. We hear these figures so often. Rarely do we sit down and really think about the amount of money we're talking about. $80 to $90 million if they fire Jimbo. He's not getting fired. Should he, based on performance? Yes, 100%. But hey, public service announcement for Texas A&M and Michigan State and the other 24 or so teams that are about to make this same mistake. When you sign a coach and you're paying him $4 or $5 million a year for 3 to 4 years, right? His first contract. You hire him off the street. Hey, coach, this is where our program's at, wherever that happens to be. We're going to give you $4 or $5 million a year for 3 or 4 years. How's that sound? Sounds good. Coach goes out, shits the bed the first year, whatever the case. Year 2, he goes 10-2, loses a New Year's Six game. You run to his house, extend his contract for 12 years, and immediately start paying him $9-10 million a year. What are you doing? What are you doing? Mel Tucker, Jimbo Fisher, the list goes on and on. Why in the world you would do that? When are people going to learn? I don't know. I don't know. But Jimbo Fisher's contract is so far above what he deserves, it's insane. Insane. Neil Brown at West Virginia. His buyout's like $18 million. People are like, oh, don't change. People, $18 million just to have him not work anymore. Do you just think for a second, $18 million. West Virginia's not paying that. I don't think has anyone ever paid an $18 million buyout? What's the highest buyout that's ever been paid? Texas A&M's not firing Jimbo Fisher. The problem is not that they're not firing him. The problem is that they can't fire him because they gave him that contract. And he didn't deserve it. Mel Tucker doesn't deserve it at Michigan State. There are some other teams right now that are on second-year coaches. And those teams are having great years. And I guarantee you, soon, that coach is going to be extended for 6, 7, 8 years for $8, $9, $10 million a year. And in 2024, when they're 4-8, the fans are going to be sitting around with their fist up their butthole, wondering how come we can't pay a $60 million buyout to fire this clown. Well, it's because of what you're about to do. It's because of the contract you're about to give him after one good year where he doesn't even win his division, doesn't even win his conference, and doesn't even make the playoffs, and you're about to back the Brinks truck up And in 2 or 3 years' time, when your team is terrible, you're going to be kicking yourself in the ass because you don't have $70 million to get rid of 350 pounds worth of dead weight. Texas A&M, your season is over. That recruiting class you signed might be over too. Why? If those kids don't transfer, then they got mental issues. Serious mental issues. Speaking of mental issues, can you believe I actually picked Georgia to lose to these people? What was I thinking? A lot of you told me how dumb I was when I made that prediction. It turns out you were right. But yes, in the offseason, I predicted Georgia to go 11-1 with a loss on the road at Mississippi State. And while I still think that game is one of Georgia's more difficult games for a couple of reasons, it's on the road against an unfamiliar opponent that we don't play every year. It's a stadium we're not familiar with. The cowbell deal. And Will Rogers, when he gets hot, does have the ability to push the ball up and down the field. The problem is they're not doing it right now. This is 2 weeks in a row where the Bigfoot offense, Mike Leach offense, has just looked absolutely abysmal. Now, it was a little bit better this week than it was against Kentucky. Against Kentucky last week, Mississippi State had 200 yards passing and 20 yards rushing. Not in the first quarter, not at halftime, total. 200 yards passing, 22 yards rushing, total. A little bit better this week. Just over 200 yards passing. I think they had about 60 yards rushing against Bama this week. But still, nothing works on the offense. Nothing is easy. They don't have... If you don't watch Mississippi State play that much and all you know is that Mike Leach is their coach and Mike Leach loves to throw the ball 60 times a game, you might have this idea of Mississippi State coming out and just throwing 50-yard bombs. That's not what they do. It's a bunch of short little rink-a-dink passes, drive down the field. This shit doesn't work. Not against good teams. Well, with good defenses. That's why it didn't work against Kentucky. It's why it didn't work against Bama. The strength of Bama's defense is their front seven. Kentucky attacks your front seven with their passing game. Mississippi State attacks your front seven with the passing game, not your secondary. They don't take deep shots. They don't have a Tennessee passing game, is what I'm saying. I'm not talking about ability-wise or talent-wise. I mean the scheme of the passing game. Not all passing schemes are the same. Tennessee likes to take deep shots. That's Bama's weakness. That's not what Mississippi State is. They're just not a very good team. They're just not a very good team. And then, it's one of these gambling style coaches, this feast or famine with this shit. But in the first quarter, Mississippi State had 2 drives in the first quarter, good drives. They got them down in Bama territory, in the red zone, inside the 30, 25, 20-yard line, twice in the first quarter. And they came away with a grand total of 0 points on those 2 drives. Why? Going for it on 4th down. This is getting out of hand in college football. This is getting absolutely out of control in college football. These analytics people. College football is not a video game. It's not Xbox. You're not hurting anyone's feelings when you go for it on 4th and 2 instead of kicking a field goal, because guess what? You're not getting it. That's the problem. So then you drive all the way down and you got no goddamn points. Mississippi State went for it on 4th down in the first quarter on their own 35-yard line. In the first fucking quarter. On their own 35. And of course they didn't get it. You're giving Bama the ball at your 35-yard line. Think this shit through. What does the analytics say about that, Mike Leach? What are you doing? What are you doing? I mean, this game it wasn't competitive. It was over at the end of the first quarter. It was even more over at halftime. The only good thing you can say about Mississippi State, and let's be real, there's rarely anything good to say about Mississippi in general. I'm talking about the whole state. But especially the football team. But you lost 30-6. The good news is in the second half, Bama only scored 6 points. Whee! You held Bama to 6 points in the second half. You can hang your cowbell on that, I guess. And this team here is another one. Boy, if I was any dumber, I'd have to delete this channel. I picked Miami to go 10-2 and play in the ACC title game. What an absolute, just abysmal abomination of a game and performance by Miami. And it goes beyond that. The entire season has been unwatchable for Miami. I don't care that it's a new coaching staff. I don't care that Tyler Van Dyke has a new offensive coordinator. I don't care that Mario Cristobal is coming in there and wanting to do things his way, so he's got to change the culture. I don't care about any of that. I don't. Not when it comes to what I saw yesterday. 8 turnovers against the Dukies. You got blown out, 45-21 or whatever it was. which is a miracle, by the way. 8 turnovers, and you only lost by 24 points or whatever. You're lucky you didn't lose by 50 or 60. I guess if it was Middle Tennessee State, you would have, but you didn't since it was Duke. But this is a team that doesn't get it or doesn't care. It's one of the two. It's one of the two. And again, Tyler Van Dyke got injured. We had to put Garcia in. These are the same Miami fans that were begging for Garcia to start the entire time anyway. And again, I say this all the time because it's true. I don't want to know about no backup. Georgia won a national title with a backup. People get injured. It's football. You have 85 scholarships. This thing, we lost to Duke by 25 points. But did you know we had a starter get injured? Yeah, I knew that. Everybody has starters injured. You lost to Duke at home in front of 11 people. No one goes to those games. Miami and UCLA, man. I bet if you added up the attendance at every Miami home game and every UCLA home game, you couldn't sell out one game at a real college football stadium. The total attendance at Miami for the year and the total attendance for UCLA at the year is probably under 100,000 people. It's just pathetic. And to be honest with you, in the case of Miami, I don't blame them. Now, with UCLA, I feel bad. They have a good team, a top 10 team, undefeated halfway through the season. Had a big home game a few weeks ago against Utah. 12 people with nothing to do showed up to watch it. I feel bad for them. With Miami, I feel bad for the fans. That's who I feel bad for. Imagine you're somebody that wasted money on season tickets and you've got to go 30 miles off campus to a rented out NFL stadium to watch your college football team diarrhea into a plastic plate for 4 quarters every single home game. That's what you're getting if you're a Miami fan. The Miami administration, the Miami coaches, people that are running this program, they are force-feeding you liquid shit. That's what they're doing. And you guys run around, the Miami fans, talking about the 80s and the 90s, and it's all about the U, and 5 rings, and Ed Reed. Nobody at Miami even knows who the fuck you're talking about. These 18 to 22-year-old kids weren't even alive the last time Miami meant anything at all in the world of college football. It's fucking sad. It really is. It's sad. The Middle Tennessee State thing, now you lose to Duke. Mario Cristobal, every coach you get, you bring in, what's his name, Manny Diaz. Y'all loved Manny Diaz. Oh, he's a Miami guy because he was your defensive coordinator. The guy hadn't unpacked his silverware from moving down in Miami, and you guys wanted him fired. Didn't even have the balls to fire him before you hired Mario Cristobal. You guys went out and hired Mario Cristobal before you even bothered to tell Manny Diaz he was fired. Fire him, he goes off wherever he goes, defense coordinator at Penn State. Bring Mario Cristobal in. Oh, this is what we've been waiting for. This is why we've been wandering in the wilderness ever since we joined the ACC in 2004. This is why we've only won the division one time since we've been in the ACC. This is why we've never won the ACC at all. This is why we've never made a college football playoff. This is why we've been in the toilet for 20 years. We were waiting on Super Mario Cristobal. And right on cue, Mario Cristobal shows up, puts those tracheotomy things they use to poke holes in your neck so you can breathe through your neck? That's what Miami fans have. They have one of those things in their neck, but instead of breathing through it, the University of Miami Athletic Department is sticking a funnel in the end of it, and they're just forcing liquid poop right down your throat. And you're saying, thank you, can I have another? Who's the next coach going to be? We're ready to get excited and fired up for no reason again. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. The only difference between Miami and Nebraska is geography and uniform colors. That's it. It's 2 dead programs who I don't think are coming back in my lifetime. Sorry. Could they, either one of them, have the occasional year where they win 10 games and make a New Year's 6 game? Maybe. Yeah, that's possible. Are any one of them in my lifetime ever going on any type of a stretch like they love to talk about from their prime? No. The U is not winning 3 or 4 national titles in a 15-year period or whatever it was from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Nebraska is never getting back to mid-90s. None of that is ever happening for those 2 schools. Time has passed them by. And unfortunately for the fans, so has the game of football. Miami, you're a stain in the toilet that you just can't get out. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about the fans. I'm talking about the football program. It's just a shit stain in the toilet that no matter how much you scrub it, you're not getting it clean. Sorry. I can smell it from here. Your season is over. Some other teams lost too. Yeah, I got me on a roll now. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up again, by the way. Who else lost? Georgia Tech, of course. Homecoming? I don't know. There was 12 people there. I don't know what they were coming home for. But Georgia Tech lost to Virginia 16-9. This was like a battle of who's the worst team in the ACC, not named Miami. And turns out it's Georgia Tech. A pick six. That's what Georgia Tech had in this game. If you're looking for Georgia Tech touchdowns, that's it. A pick six. Then they screw up the extra point, kick a field goal, end up with 9 points. Congratulations. Y'all are terrible. I can't wait till Georgia beats you by 100 points at the end of the year. You're like a punching bag. Pitt lost to Louisville? Wait a minute. Pitt lost to Louisville 24-10. Louisville's horrible, ain't they? Yeah, they are. Turns out Pitt's even worse. Pitt's even worse. Hold on, let me check something. Let me check something real quick. Pitt 24, Louisville 10. In regulation? Damn. Ain't that something? Louisville 24, Pitt 10. Yeah, Louisville beat Pitt 24-10 and didn't need overtime to do it. Amazing. Oh, well, Pitt, your season's been over. Look, if you lose to Tennessee, you got no hope. Sorry. Kansas, man. Who's old enough to remember when Kansas was a good story 3-4 weeks ago? Lost to Baylor. 3 straight L's for Kansas. 35-23. Baylor gets the win. Speaking of giant L's, West Virginia lost to Texas Tech 48-10. No, I wrote that down wrong. Nope, wrote it down right. 48-10. Told everybody all offseason, Neil Brown, he's the next one. Coach don't know he's doing it. I like to pinpoint these coaches that the fans are in love with, but to me it's obvious they don't know what they're doing and they're going to get fired sooner rather than later. And this year's target for me in the offseason was Neil Brown. Now, it's funny now because you go to any West Virginia channel or anywhere where anyone's talking about West Virginia or any comment section where anyone's talking about West Virginia, it's all the same thing. Neil Brown, terrible. Neil Brown ain't over his head. Neil Brown don't know what he's doing. Hope we can pay Neil Brown buyout. Hey, who can we get to replace Neil Brown? All the same things I was saying 6 months ago, but I was an idiot. So, but again, just like with Dan Mullen at Florida, eventually, y'all figure it out. Shout out to the Mountaineer, man. Who else embarrassed themselves? Purdue? Purdue lost to Wisconsin 35-24. Worst Wisconsin team, honestly, that I can remember. I'm sure if I went back and looked up their record every year or whatever, I'd find a worse year. But just off the top of my head, thinking about what I know about Wisconsin in general from year to year, since I've been doing this on YouTube or watching college football or whatever, one of the worst Wisconsin teams I've ever seen, and Purdue lost to them on homecoming. I don't know why you scheduled Wisconsin for your homecoming game. That was dumb. Hasn't Wisconsin beat Purdue 20-something times in a row? Or it's some ridiculous number. It's some ridiculous number. And whatever that number was on Friday, it's one number higher now because Purdue lost again. No surprise to me. Vandy 17, Mizzou 14. Man, in the Hey Don't Forget About Us Bowl, Vanderbilt with a miraculous 17-14 win over Missouri. Shout out to Vandy, man. And how can we forget BYU versus Liberty in the Hypocrite Bowl played yesterday? BYU lost this thing 41-14. What? Liberty absolutely just annihilated BYU. 41. What does Hugh Freeze got going on over there at Liberty? Boy, they must have some of the world's best prostitutes over there at Liberty. What does Hugh Freeze got going on? 41-14 over BYU. Damn, beat the hypocrisy out of them. Hey, have you heard the good news? Don't come knocking on my door, I'll tell you that right now. Nope. Don't come trying to sell crazy here. I'm all stocked up. Yep, those teams lost. We have some teams that won and looked good yesterday. Ohio State started off slow. Wasn't all positive for Ohio State. Started off a little slow. Might have been C.J. Stroud's worst game. Definitely First half, not good. I think he ended up with a couple of interceptions. Well, of course, we'll do the Heisman list at the end. But Ohio State ended up winning the game against Iowa 54-10. And again, look at here, Iowa. Who have they played? What do we say about Iowa every time we talk about Iowa? Not just me, but even you. And you and you and you. You all say the same thing. Their offense is horrendous. Kirk Ferentz needs to fire his son. I guess his son is the offensive coordinator. They win off of defensive turnovers. You know why you say that all the time? It's because they have a pretty good defense. Ohio State 54, Iowa 10. Let's see. Bama 30-6 over Mississippi State. Now, I kind of saw this coming. I thought Bama was going to roll in this game, but there was some people who had Bama on upset alert because they've looked bad a couple of times this year, and I get it, and then lost last year to Tennessee. But if you look at the recent scores over the last few years between Bama and Mississippi State, for whatever reason, Saban's got Mike Leach's number, 30-6 yesterday. LSU 45-20 over Ole Miss. LSU might be the second best team in the West. Marinate on that. Just waddle around in that for a second. LSU, who lost to Florida State, who got blown out by Tennessee, might be the second best team in the West. If it's not LSU, who is it? Who do you think it is? It's beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss was in the top 10 and undefeated. Or is LSU the best team in the West? Boy, wouldn't that be? God, that would be scary. I don't think that's the case. But worst case, they're the second best team in the West. Wow. And they lost to the second best team in the East by 40 points. The SEC East is so far ahead of the SEC West, it's getting embarrassing at this point. It's almost not even any fun talking about it anymore. It's like saying, hey, did you know the sun's going to come up tomorrow? Hey, did you know the SEC East is better than the SEC West? Yeah, those are two obvious fucking things, dummy. I know, that's what I'm saying. It is obvious. TCU looked good in the second half. Again, talked about that game already. First half struggles, trailing by double digits in the first half again for the second week in a row, turn it around in the second half and win. Oregon, 45-30 over UCLA. Get mad about it. Get mad about it. Get even more mad then. What else? Oklahoma State, 41-34 over Texas. We talked about that one already. The Big 12 is going to be crazy to watch in the last month of the season in terms of who makes that title game, Big 12 title game. Wake Forest keeps on rolling, 43-15 over Boston College. They still only have one loss, and that's the overtime loss to Clemson, to the Taters. Wake Forest, pretty good teams, at least offensively. Penn State, 45-17 over Minnesota. It's kind of a SEC East versus SEC West thing here. Yes, the SEC East is miles ahead of the SEC West. Yes, the Big Ten East is miles ahead of the Big Ten West. But still, Minnesota was one of the best teams in the Big Ten West. And Penn State needed a big win after just getting absolutely shellacked last week by Michigan. It was the whiteout game for Penn State, so they were all hyped up to dress up like snowmen for no reason in the middle of October. But the Nittany Lions did win 45-17 over something called Minnesota. South Carolina. Okay, I did the Texas A&M part of this video earlier in the your season is over thing, and South Carolina fans are going, why don't you give us no credit? This is a loser's video, but I'm going to give you credit now. You looked good yesterday. This is a big win for South Carolina and Shane Beamer. This is going to be now 2 years in a row where Shane Beamer has outperformed expectations. That's good. Now look, if your expectations are 2 and you win 5, that's outperforming. If your expectations are 5 and you win 7, that's outperforming. As it turns out, was dead wrong about South Carolina this year. I thought South Carolina might go 5-7 this year. They've already got 5 wins. They're 5-2. They're 5-2. Their only 2 losses are to Georgia and who else did they lose to? Who else did they lose to? Drawing a blank. Let me know down below. I know they're 5-2. South Carolina might be ranked. Are the polls already out when you're watching this? South Carolina might be ranked today. This is a good win for South Carolina. They had never beat Texas A&M before. They're one of the least respected teams in the SEC. Now, look, I don't think South Carolina. Look, I'm not trolling like I do with Oregon, where I pump Oregon up because I like to troll y'all about Georgia beating Oregon. Georgia beat the absolute will to live out of South Carolina too. That's not what I'm doing about South Carolina. I don't think South Carolina's a great team. They're not on a Georgia or Oregon level, obviously. But for the level they're on, they're getting good wins. The win at Kentucky. And look, I get it. Will Levis didn't play. That's not the point. Point is, that game was penciled in as a loss by everybody, except for South Carolina fans in the preseason. This game, penciled in as a loss by everybody, except South Carolina fans in the preseason. This is 2 wins they have now that most people didn't think they would have. They're going to have a better year again than most people thought they would have. And the weird part about that, it's got nothing to do with Spencer Rattler, because he's a disaster. Now, look, I'm giving you your due here, South Carolina man. You look good. A great win for your program to finally get the Texas A&M monkey off your back. Spencer Rattler ain't no good, though. He's just not. Now, maybe he'll be better next year if he decides to. Well, I don't know what he's going to do, but you're winning in spite of Spencer Rattler, not winning because of Spencer Rattler. He's not. He's a garbage can. Notre Dame beat UNLV 44-21. Whoopity-doo! So those teams won and looked good. Only a handful of teams yesterday won and looked bad. Cincinnati, 29-27 over SMU. Still just one loss, though. Probably going to remain ranked. And no, SMU is not a good team. People are going to say, SMU was good last year. Yeah, that was last year. This year, they're 3-4. Their coach is gone. Now, if you can figure out where his coach went, that'll help you figure out why somebody's in the top 10. And SMU ain't. But anyway, who else looked bad? DJ Ukulele, talked about that already. Looked terrible. Oh, I left a couple off the looked good list. Dabo Swinney. I have Dabo Swinney on the looked good list. What he did by yanking DJ, again, he deserves his credit for that. I've already talked about it. And one other thing on the looked good list, where is it? Tennessee's offense. What a shocker. Tennessee's offense looked good against an FCS team. There you go. Back to the looked bad list. Got Cincinnati. TCU, terrible first half again for the second week in a row. When is that going to catch up with them? That, to me, is the storyline for TCU. They keep trailing by double digits in the second half, but they keep coming back and winning. How long can they keep that up? We'll see. DJ Ukulele looked bad. Talked about that. And what is this? Oh, Tennessee defense. Yeah. Tennessee played a horrible FCS team. Not a group of 5 team. Not one of these nobody FBS teams. Nope. An FCS team. And gave up not 100, not 200, not 300, but 400 yards of offense to an FCS team and 24 points scored against them. Whee! Yes, you have a great offense. Either the first or second best offense, probably, in all of college football, Tennessee, man. I don't understand. Tennessee, everywhere you go, Tennessee, man, is in the comment section looking for pats on the back. It's weird. It's like they need some type of outside affirmation. Like they need people to tell them, hey, buddy, hey, y'all are doing a good job. Like, they're sitting there, you're like, hey, man, y'all keep, hey, Tennessee, we're so proud of you, buddy. Man, look, hey, you beat Alabama, buddy. The last time y'all beat Alabama, you were eating mushed peas out of a jar. Good job, buddy. I'm so proud of you. I am so proud of you. Look at Hendon Hooker. Oh, do you want to put Hendon Hooker on the Heisman list? Do you want to put Hendon Hooker on the Heisman list? Hey, you want to put Jalen Hyatt on the Biletnikoff Award list for best receiver? Oh, Jalen Hyatt is so good. Hendon Hooker is so good. Tennessee, man, you had such a good win. Such a good win you had over Alabama. Uncle Woo is proud of you. Uncle Woo's so proud of you.
Sunbelt Billy, I guess you better slow your losing down. Sunbelt Billy now, baby, I guess you better slow your losing down.